Hey gang, it is Monday, September 18th, 2017, and this is Brooklyn Pony Part 11. I discussed a bunch of stuff was going on in Part 10.5, and for those of you just tuning in, you can go back and look at previous videos, but basically I started with a 66 Mustang convertible that was rusted to pieces. I salvaged some parts from that car and also some parts from a 66 coupe, and have been assembling those to what amounts to a Dynacorn floor pan, B-pillars, firewall, various pieces and parts, as you can see. So as I move along, and before I start putting in the frame rails, as I talked about in the previous video, I'm going to take care of this dash. The dash that was in the original convertible had rust through it, so it was no good, and I salvaged the dash from the 66 coupe parts car. So the only thing I really need to do to it at this point is fix this radio opening. Somebody has, of course, cut these up, as happens very often, and so there's a repair patch supplied by Mustangs Unlimited. You can see it's got Dynacorn on it as well, but basically this piece is a universal type of piece. Dynacorn doesn't actually make it, I don't believe. I think it's they just put their sticker on it. But anyway, as you can see, what I plan to do is cut out the black line, transfer that to the patch panel, and then work it back in. And the reason I'm doing the dash right now, or first, is because I've already got the firewall in place and the side panels and the B-pillars and all that stuff, but in order to get the cowl in place properly, I need to have the dash in place. I don't want to put the cowl in and then try to force the dash in. I don't think that's the best plan. So as you can see, you've got a couple of flanges here. You've got a flat flange that mates to the top of the dash, and also the upper portion of the cowl mates to that, and then I believe this area, this also mates to the dash. So that's the plan, is to get this straightened up and drive on from there. So I'm going to get started. Okay, there's the piece I cut out, and it worked out well to lay it on the back side of the new piece, because there's a little bit of existing material here in these corners that help line things up. There you can see. So now that I've traced it out, I'll cut out that piece and then mock it into the big hole that's in the dash now. Alright, so there I have the piece cut to fit and mocked in place, and as you can see, I've got some C-clamps holding it on each end, and also a clamp holding it in the center. And to me, the most important part is having this, joggled area lined up on both sides, and I do. And then it'll adjust a little bit more up here on top as I weld. I can push that up just a little bit and take care of most of that gap. But next step is just to weld it in. So there it is with the initial welding done on it. I did do it in short, sections all the way around, and there may be a few little holes left. But what I'll do at this point is sand down all of the high weld and get a better look at it. And if I need to re-weld anything, I'll take care of it from there. Well, I think that turned out pretty good. There's one pinhole for sure right there, and just a couple other little spots I might hit, but otherwise maybe just a very light skim of filler just to smooth it up, but I'm happy with that. So I'll fill in that little spot weld and finish blending blending that back down, and then I'll work on getting the dash in place in the car. Alright, so I have the dash set in place, and things are lining up really nice, as they should. One thing I did have to repair was the end. I cut off this piece that was right here. I just didn't like the way it looked. It was too thin and just wasn't going to look good. So I remade that piece, and of course I'll put some holes in there so I can weld it to the B-pillar. Up on top here, I'll drill some holes through this panel, this little section here, so I can attach it. I'll do the same on the other side. And there will be a weld here at the bottom. And you can see this is the panel from the coupe as the dash is from the coupe. So that little weld right there, that little weld spot lines up really nice. One thing I will point out, and it kind of threw me a little bit, got some noisy bugs out there. If you look, if I get enough light in here, well, this cutout right here, see that shape? Look at the gap between the lower section cutout for the access to the plate for the door hinge. And look at the gap from there to there. It's about 3 inches or so. And on this side, it's like 1.25 inches or 1 inch. Kind of weird. I don't know why they did that. Maybe somebody knows, but I just think it's kind of odd to see stuff like that once in a while, and you wonder what's off, because I was looking at the let's say the drop from the hole to the bottom of the dash, and this one actually overlaps the hole. Sorry, overlaps the hole. So I thought, man, something's wrong, but no, that's the way they're made. So just an observation. So I'll finish prepping this and get the dash welded in, and then start working on the upper cowl. Alright, the dash is fully welded in. See there in the corners. Also down here at the bottom. Very close to what the factory had. And now I'm going to prep the lower half of the cowl. And you can also see that I painted, if I didn't mention before, the back side of the dash. So that shouldn't be any problems down the road. And you see I have the cowls, they're upper and lower upside down right now. And the reason for that is the back half of the lower cowl, it just comes in right here in front of the dash. It doesn't actually kick up. So it sits right here. And this flange on the upper half is what mates to the dash section. Alright, no big deal there, other than I want to drill holes in the upper half so that I can weld to the lower half. And it's pretty simple, and it, you know, you could say it's pretty obvious. You know, you got the angle here on this flange, but what I intend to do, as you can see, I've drawn a line along the edge following where the lower half meets the upper. And all that does is give me some verification so that I don't drill slightly off. I know there's plenty of room there, but it's just a simple, you know, little thing that you can do to verify where you're at. And I'll set the lower cowl up in place so I can show you what I'm going to do for the drill pattern on that as well. And there's all I'm going to do. Pretty simple, maybe 1.5 inch pattern all the way around, and of course it'll be welded in up here to this upper portion. And then I did joggle this slightly here so that the pattern comes forward just a little bit. It's not going to make much difference. I could have stayed back, but I wanted it closer to that flange, so that's what I did. And if you'll notice, now these are, you know, the Dynacorn dash, cowl, upper and lower. The line here is pretty consistent across the front, but when it gets over here, it's off just slightly. And also these holes are just a little bit off, and I'm not sure why, you know, because it's a match set. You really can't do much. You can't move, you know, can grind this down a little bit to move it around, but it has to be centered. Same way over here, you know, this is on, there it is, on the edge where it belongs, and then this gaps away slightly. So what I'll do when I get to that point is I can put a pair of vice grips on here gently and tap on this part of the firewall, and it'll let it come back just a little bit and help take care of some of that gap. I just hate to see it sticking out like that. But again, that's the way the panels are made, and there's just a little bit you can do to remedy that. So that's where it's at, and I'll get these holes drilled and get that upper half in place. Alright, as you can see, the lower half of the cowl is welded in place, and I did blend down all the welds, and of course I'll top coat those with the weld through primer before I put the top half on. Prior to that, I'm going to spray Shopline epoxy primer on this interior surface and all around the towers and everything, and then I'll use brushable Eastwood seam sealer and make sure to go around these towers so there's no gaps and everything's nice and tight. And there normally wouldn't be a problem anyway. As you can see, there's a flange internally that kicks up that's supposed to catch any moisture, but if you don't let that moisture in there in the first place, you're further ahead. Now, I've already scuffed this with Scotch-Brite prior to the epoxy, and then I'm going to top coat that with some Rust-Oleum. The car is going to be painted back to its original silver blue color, and rather than try to, I know they don't make that color in, say, like Rust-Oleum, but I know Rust-Oleum is a pretty tough product, so it'll blend better internally with that than it would with the black. And I would top coat the epoxy anyway, but I think that'll take care of it, and it'll be nice and solid and look good as well. And there it is with the epoxy on top, and also the brushable seam sealer all the way around that base. And I didn't spray up here because I'm going to be welding, so no sense in adding material that's going to get burned out. And then I had also had some epoxy left over, so I sprayed the inside of these upper half of the torque boxes, and also applied seam sealer in those corners. And I may add more later. I don't know, I have to see how things fit, but that's a good start. And now I'll top coat the epoxy and let that dry, and I'll be ready to install the upper half of the cowl. Well, I'll have the upper half of the cowl set in place, and you can see there's my weld pattern. And then up on top, where I did a different type of, I staggered the pattern to avoid the little retainer clips or retainer posts. I didn't want to get too close to those when it comes time to grind, so I left a little bigger space between those. I was able to put a pair of vice grips, C-clamps, into the left, or the passenger side wiper hole, and was able to clamp the lower half of the cowl to the upper half. And then also this bigger C-clamp here comes underneath the dash, or through the dash where the glove box is, and clamps. And I'll be able to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll likely start on this side over here and weld this in, and then finish up on the other side, or on the driver's side. Alright, the cowl is in. And just a note, I think I mentioned I would start from one side and work across. What I actually did was work from the center, left and right, and that way it would lay down easier if there was any conflict with fitment. You don't want to try to push it all one direction. The holes line up really nice for the wiper holes. Even the holes up here are pretty close now. Sorry. And all I have left to do is blend it down. And I know somebody had asked me before about putting seam sealer, like if there was seam sealer between the two panels, and they may have done that when they produced these, and they used a spot welder. With doing this with a MIG, you're not going to be able to get away with that. It'll catch fire. I've seen somebody, and I wouldn't recommend this, but I saw them install the cowls with panel bond adhesive, and really you're not supposed to do that. Panel bond is not meant for any kind of structural area, and I would consider this structural in my opinion. But anyway, some people have used panel bond. Now, my intention is once I blend down these welds, and of course it'll get more, epoxy and stuff down the road, but this will all get seam sealer all the way around. and close up any of these gaps. Or, you know, I say gaps, there's no gaps, but close up any of these edges so that there's no way moisture can get in there. And beyond that, on the underside, I will also seam seal where the firewall, you know, meets the bottom of the cowl, and the same way with the side panels. So all that will get a layer of seam sealer as well. But I'm pretty happy with it. Things are coming along pretty nice, and the next phase will be installing the frame rails and all the other front components and suspension parts. So I'm looking forward to that. Yep, I think that's it. So this will be the end of this video, which I still believe is part 11, and the next one will be part 12. So again, thanks for being along for the ride, and thanks for watching.